Hi, I'm Mike Rudinick of RackForms, and in this video, I'm going to be taking this this page logic right here, and we're going to be creating a form out of this. In other words, this is a tutorial then on how we use RackForms to create forms that route in complex ways. So the first thing I'm going to just take note of then is, although there is a lot of complex logic going on here, a lot of arrows pointing to different places, the one thing that I can note about this job straight away is that there are 10 pages in this job. So page 1, page 2, so on and so forth. So as somebody who's going to build this in RackForms, the very first step that I undertook was I created 10 pages and then I named those 10 pages something that made sense. So what I did is I created 10 pages, as we can see here. And for each one of those pages, I named it something that made sense, which in this case is page1.php. I select this guy, and under, again, I'm just going page properties here. Here's page2.php, page3.php, so on and so forth, all the way down through 10, page10.php, and then finally for this confirmation page right here, I have confirmation.php. The other thing I did is I made sure that because this job allows us to skip entire sections of the form, which is usually a security risk, or for example, we don't want somebody usually skipping pages of the form. By default, RackForms won't allow that. So one thing I did for each one of these pages then is I checked this box under Form Properties here. Just select the page, go to Form Properties, and I checked the box that said Page Not Required, Allow Direct Access. And as the name suggests here, that simply means that if I follow this route, going option 1, page 2, I'm going to skip all these pages right here, right? So we have to tell RackForms that it's okay to skip pages in this job. Again, usually that's not what we want. If we had, let's say, a 3-page form asking for mortgage information, we wouldn't want the user to skip the second page of the form and submit it directly. However, that is not what we want in this case. We want them to be able to skip around pages. So with that setup done then, with checking all these boxes, creating my pages, and then naming my pages, something that made sense, the next step then was to add some labels and items to my forms. So this is something I would strongly recommend. In other words, when you create your pages then, name each one of your pages. Even though this isn't going to be in the final form, this makes it much easier to quickly glance at your job and figure out what your pages are doing. The other thing I would absolutely encourage you to do is not create all the form fields just yet that this job contains. Just create the skeleton as I've done here and only put in the form fields that we need to create conditional routing logic. Now, conditional routing logic, what do I mean by that? Well, if we look at our template right here, you can see that there are 3 pages here that are essentially saying we're giving the user the ability to choose which page they go to next based on an option that they select. So if we have some kind of logic that says option 1 was selected, that means we're going to go to page 2. If option 2 is selected, we'll go to page 6. And if option 3 was selected, we'll go to page 10. The way we do that in RackForms is to very explicitly create, in this case, a radio item that gives the user that option. Do they want option 1, 2, or 3? Option 1, 2, or 3. Now the way that we redirect to the appropriate page then is through conditional processing. So step 1 is I create my radio item, as I've done right here, and under its item options here, I simply added option 1, 2, and 3. The magic, that is the way that the routing happens, actually comes from the submit button. So standard radio item here, 3 options. Here's where the magic happens. If I select the submit option here, or select the submit item, and if I scroll down in its properties here, we're going to come to the conditional processing block. And you notice that I have some text written here. This is how we're routing to the appropriate place. Now the basic idea behind conditional processing is we take this code right here, we copy it, and we paste it into this box, and then modify this value, and this value, so that it works for our form. So you notice here, just for a second, that the default comes in as checkbox yes in page 0. The way it actually works in this form is page 1 options, option 1 in page2.php. So what does this mean? This right here this pound sign and these two braces with the text in between, is we're grabbing this form field's value. So step 1 options, this form field is called page 1 options. And we can actually see that if I select my radio group right here. If I scroll up, under name value, you see it's called page 1 options. So page 1 options is the name of the form field. This means grab the value of page 1 options when somebody clicks the submit button. Then we say, if page 1 options is equal to option 1, that is the text right here, option 1, we're going to go to page2.php. So here then is page2.php. I'll select this page, and it's called page2.php. And to be correct, page-2.php. And so that's how that route works. Those 3 items that we change are the name of the form field, right here, the value of the form item, in this case option 1, and then the name of the page that we want to go to, which is page-2.php. We then create, because we have 3 options, an if statement for each one of those. Let me get rid of this extra one I added before. So you can see then that if page 1 options, the form field, is equal to option 1, go to page 2. If page 1 options, however, is equal to option 2, go to page 6. So if we look at our chart again, if on this first page we select option 2, we want to go to page 6. Because when I created the skeleton in this form, I was careful to name page 2, and page 6, page 6. It's very easy then to see how page 6 then is going to go to exactly where we want it. Finally, we have our last option. If this form field is equal to option 3, excuse me here. If it's equal to option 3, we're going to go to page 10. So option 3 means go to page 10. And of course, that's exactly what we do. When I run this form then, it looks a little something like this. If option 3 is selected, I'll go to page 10. If option 1 is selected, page 2. And if option 2 is selected, page 6. And again, this is where those labels come in as well. Much, much easier to work with the form when it's nice and small like this, and I have labels that let me know I'm going to the right page right away. The other type of routing that we have in this form, real quickly, is a much simpler type. These are a little bit more complex because we have to grab user input and then do something based on that. So I have to say, what does this form field equal? What is its value equal to? And then go to a certain page. There's another type of routing which is much, much simpler, which is called submit route. So if we look at our little chart right here, you see here that if I follow this route, I select option 1, I'm going to go to page 2. If I select option 1 from here, I'm going to go to page 3. So we could end up on page 3 right here. Then when we're on page 3, where do we go next? Unfortunately, it's not specifically laid out in this particular form, but let's say that if we selected option 1, we go to page 7 after this. Or excuse me, if we landed on option 1, page 3, the next page that we hit is page 7. To create that route, all we have to do is create a submit button, and then under its basic attributes right here, enter that page name under submit route. So we're saying, if we're on page 3 and they click submit, go to page 7. Page7.php. Now it is important to note that we actually have a shortcut for this. So this submit route quick select right here simply lists all the pages that are on a job. And so if I wanted to instead go to page4.php, I would simply select page 4 and it'll go to page4.php. Similarly, one area that is very explicit about when we hit the submit button is what happens when we're on option 3, page 10. Here we have a direct arrow going to the submit page. So the submit page right here is what we're calling confirmation page. So we know that if we're on option 3, page 10, that is page 10, we go directly to the submit button, or excuse me, we go to the submit page. So if I go to my submit button right here, under its submit route, we're going to go to confirmation.php. This page, of course, is called confirmation.php. And once again, if we wanted to, we could use our submit route quick page select to select that page as well. The final step in all this then is a real quick discussion on saving our values then to a database. So at the easiest level, if I just wanted to send an email and I didn't have to worry about format, I could just add a simple email module to this form right here. And RackForms will just take all the pages that have been filled out and it'll create an email for us. However, the other way, and again, this can be very quick here, this is just a brief primer. The other way is we want to save this information to a custom database. And so we'd be using SQL+. The way that we handle that is we don't actually create SQL+ in this page. We would instead go to the form page where we wanted to save our information, and we'd select it. So let's say we want to say page 6 needs to write to a database. I'd select the page, I'd right click, and I'd select SQL+ Automator, and then I click on this MySQL link right here. This then goes through and allows us to create, if need be, a database table that will accept this page's results. In other words, what I'm saying is, in terms of a database, each one of these pages should have its own table. That doesn't mean we have to do it that way. Maybe we want to have one table for page 2 and 3, but usually I wouldn't do it that way. I would very specifically use the SQL+ Automator here to create one database table for every page in the form. If nothing else, for most jobs, this is going to make the tables much more manageable, and it's much easier at that point if one of these job pages changes to go in and instead of having to change a huge database table, just change one database table. So use the SQL+ Automator and make sure you do it that way. Okay, that's enough for that. Hopefully this video has been helpful. Any questions or comments, call or email us. The phone number is at the top of the website at rackforms.com, and we can be reached at info@rackforms.com. Thanks a lot for your time, and hopefully this has been helpful.